Hi everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden, and I am the host of this program. I'd like to start off today by congratulating my friend Jim Lamy, who's the chairman of the Select Board in Castleton, on being chosen as the League of Cities and Towns Vermont as their Public Servant of the Year, I guess, or as the Town Administrator of the Year. Jim Lamy has had a life which is dedicated to public service. His dad was the federal judge in Vermont for a number of years. Jim graduated from West Rutland High School in 1951, St. Michael's College in 55. He is married to Kathleen Solerny, whose family used to run the South End Food Market over here on Strongs Avenue. And that's now a pizza parlor. But the Solerny family ran that for many, many years. Jim is a retired teacher. He's a history teacher. Coached basketball for many years, first of all at Proctor High School, then his alma mater here at West Rutland, and for many years at Rutland High School. He taught American history in the what we used to call the junior high, is now called the middle school. And he taught history at the middle school in Rutland for a number of years while he was coaching the Red Raiders basketball team very, very successfully. Upon his retirement, he retired to Castleton and has been very, very active in the Lake Bombazine Association over there and also in the town affairs, serving many years on the select board. In fact, I think he is probably the senior member of that select board in times of number of years served. And this past time around, he was elected chair of the board. I know Jim will do a good job. He's very, very thorough, very exact. And he's done a great job with the Lake Bombazine Association and for the town of Castleton. And God willing, he'll be able to continue that capacity for many, many years. So I want to congratulate Jim Lamy. And I don't think the Vermont League of Cities and Towns could have made a better selection. Second item, it's hard to believe that in Vermont, the football season has hit the halfway mark and gone beyond. And of course, a lot of football fans, in the state of Vermont. High school football generates an awful lot of interest. And the way it looks right now, at least in Division I, it looks like Middlebury, St. Johnsbury, Burton probably the number 3 seed, Rutland High number 4. The way the state playoffs are set up now, the top 8 teams in each division get a shot at the state championship. And the way it goes, number 1 hosts number 8, 2 number 7, 3 number 6, and 4 number 5. So the way it looks right now, it's sort of a toss-up who's going to be number 1. Both Middlebury and St. Johnsbury are undefeated. St. Johnsbury made a very strong bid for that when they defeated Burton 50-38 this past week. High-scoring game from 2 high-scoring teams. The head coach at St. Johnsbury Academy was the first football coach at Castleton University. And his son is now the quarterback for St. Johnsbury Academy. As far as I know, I don't believe St. Johnsbury and Middlebury play during the regular year, so if things play out the way they should, and they both remain undefeated and get through the playoffs successfully, they will meet in the state championship game, which will be played up at Alumni Field at Rutland High School in November. Now, who's going to be number 1? Well, it's kind of hard to say. They both go in undefeated. It's probably going to have to be decided by quantitative points. In other words, the number of points you've scored and the number of points scored against you. And that'll determine the number 1 seed. The other guy will be number 2. Burton. They go the rest of the way undefeated. They should be the number 3 seed and Rutland High number 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. Pretty much a toss-up. I'd say probably BFA St. Albans number 5, maybe Essex number 6. Take a wild guess, say Colchester, number 7, and Champlain Valley, number 8. Rice Memorial High School this year, they seem to be going down the same path that MSJ went as far as football is concerned. They've been taking they had to forfeit their first game because they didn't have efficient number of playing personnel. And the rest of the season, they've been taking their licks. They have yet to win a game and probably will not win a game this year. Chances are pretty good that Rice may go from Division I, which they shouldn't have been anyway, when Burlington and South Burlington, two of the biggest schools in the state, can combine and play Division I. Rice by right should probably be in Division II or even maybe Division III, but probably more likely Division II. In Division II, team that dropped down from Division I, the Brattleboro Colonels, are tearing Division II apart. There seems to be some thought that maybe the Principals Association dropped Brattleboro a year too soon. Playing Division I the last 2 years, Brattleboro's only won a couple of games. But in Division II, they're tearing the division apart. They're undefeated, and I don't believe they've had a close game yet. And you get down to Division III, it's BFA of St. Albans, or BFA of Fairfax, and Pulteney High School appear to be the two top teams. It's rather interesting that two schools that used to be in contention in Division III this year are on the lower end. In fact, Woodstock are the defending champions. And I see the other night, because of lack of personnel, they had to forfeit a game, which is really too bad. But better that way than having somebody get seriously hurt. So that's the picture in high school football, college level. Old alma mater there. The Spartans of Castleton University are still looking for their first win. The big state rivalry with Norwich. Norwich whopped them 35-14 to get the maple sap bucket. So that will be back in Norwich again this year. Norwich having good years so far. They so far are undefeated. Well, when you go up to the big college setup, it looks like it's going to be the Southeast Conference. It looks like it's going to be number 1 this year again. The ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, Clemson probably going to dominate that. Looks like your top teams again are Clemson and Alabama. Certainly Georgia is going to be a contender in there. Oklahoma, still undefeated, rolling along. They got a big game this week with Texas. And maybe from the Big Ten, Ohio State seems to be tearing everybody apart. And an outside shot, possibly Wisconsin. For Notre Dame, in some ways, Notre Dame ought to be ashamed of themselves, playing schools like Bowling Green and hammering them 52-0. You know, that's like a big bully picking on a little guy. And, you know, those games really don't, they're like a glorified scrimmage. But they really shouldn't count in figuring out your overall standings. And, you know, I don't like to see some of these big schools scheduling definitely smaller schools, weaker schools, so they can fatten their record. They roll up the score on them, and then they say, hey, look, we rolled over this one, we rolled over that one. Well, a year ago, Notre Dame barely hung on to win 22-16. This year, they rolled 52-0. And they beat New Mexico, which cannot be regarded as a football power, 66-14. But, you know, Notre Dame, if they're going to get back in the Final Four football season, they've got to go undefeated the rest of the way. And they're going to have to win big. They got Southern Cal this weekend, and Southern Cal is not the power it once was. And neither is Stanford that they close out the season against. And Michigan has been having their problems this year. So Notre Dame, they've got a reasonable schedule the rest of the way. They could finish 11-1. Whether they will qualify for the Final Four, I don't know. You got to take a look at these two soft spots and say, well, does that really merit a Final Four position? Actually, I think at the college level, if they're going to have this NCAA playoff, it should be at least 8 teams, not just 4, 8 teams. Because the way it works out, there are 5 power conferences, and usually 4 of the 5 will make the Final Four. Last year, 3 made it. That's because Notre Dame, which is an independent, was the number 4 spot. But we will see how that works out. Getting into national politics, Congress, at least the House, is pushing ahead with this impeachment proceedings. And to say that the Trump administration is concerned is putting it mildly. Excuse me. If you've been watching baseball this weekend, you notice that the Trump people have ads trying to tell us what a great guy Trump is and how innocent he is. And these people that are looking into his criminal activities are bad. Well, to spend that kind of money on that kind of advertising shows that there is something afoot. And obviously, Trump's advisors are saying, well, it looks like you've been caught with your hand in the cookie jar. And so they are spending big bucks on these ads that normally you wouldn't see until the final presidential campaign gets underway. But they're spending the money on them now. And they're trying to knock down the possibility that the House may impeach the president. Well, the House can impeach, but the Senate has to convict. And I think with the number of toadies, including Mitch the jerk from Kentucky, who is the majority leader in the Senate, that a Republican-controlled Senate, of course, will never convict a Republican president with an election year coming up. But this impeachment, even should Trump be reelected, and hopefully he will not be, if anybody has any sense at all or half a brain in their head, they certainly aren't going to reelect that jerk. But just in case surprise happens, and the Democrats still control the House, and hopefully will get control of the Senate, they can proceed on with the impeachment proceedings, bring it into the Senate, get a conviction. Trump is out of there, maybe on his way to jail. Well, it's pretty obvious, as I said before, excuse me, it's pretty obvious that he is concerned. And if you're innocent, as he claims to be, you don't get all upset over it. You say, well, justice will work, and I'll be cleared. But apparently he is guilty, and he's guilty of a lot of other things too. And that is why they're spending these big bucks now on these TV commercials, trying to exemplify him. He's done this, he's done that. Well, most of what he's done is talk about it. The economy is doing well right now, but not because of the Trump administration, but because of what was put in place in the Obama administration that took us from a recession that he inherited from George W. Bush. He inherited this recession, which was close to a depression, put in place a number of practices, some which were good, some were not so good, but it did get the country back on track. And a result of these changes that have taken place, the economy is booming. The current administration, of doing anything, they're trying to slow it down and destroy it, which these numerous tariffs that they're imposing up and down and all around tends to do. We saw the stock market go way, way down for a while. Now it has, excuse me, it has rebounded and is coming back, but that's no thanks to the current administration. Also, I think people are becoming aware of the waste of money. For example, building this stupid wall and taking all that money out of the military budget, the Department of Defense budget, to build a wall which isn't going to amount to diddly. It's hurting our military preparedness, hurting it real bad. And the fact that the President of the United States kowtows to the President of Russia, who seems to think that his good old buddies are the most vicious dictators of all time, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who had an American citizen kidnapped and then butchered, little Chop Chop from North Korea, and some of his other criminal buddies. And it's hurt the United States. We're losing our position of leadership. The President of France, Mr. Macron, seems to have taken the role of leadership of the free world. One of the big problems that we have that our current so-called leader denies is climate change. All you have to do is look at the way things have changed. Look at the land that we're losing as the oceans accumulate more and more water with the melting of these icebergs in Antarctica and up in Greenland and up in the Arctic. The way the permafrost in northern Alaska is starting to melt. The result is that many of the people that were buried there that died from disease and everything, as they come to the surface, these diseases are going to become active again. There's a huge denial of climate change, and the United States pulled out of the Paris Accords. I mean, right now, as Jimmy Carter, our former president, said, the country cannot afford 4 more years of the current administration. It's interesting, these ads, how the crooks try to portray the people pushing impeachment as part of the swamp. The swamp are the guys that are there now. The White House, the administration, is the worst swamp we've ever had down there. And it's time they go. One thing the current administration has done, they have gotten people more involved in politics. You look at all the demonstrations that have taken place. But you know, the bottom line is that demonstrations won't make a bit of difference if people don't go to the ballot box and vote. That's why you're going to make the change. Go and vote. Show up and vote. Vote absentee if you have to. But make sure you vote, because that's where the difference in a democracy is made. You can demonstrate from now till hell freezes over. But it's not going to make a bit of difference if on election day you're going to sit on your hands. For all you folks demonstrating, especially you young people that are demonstrating, turn 18, register, and vote. Turn out and vote. And that's the way you'll make change, positive change. In 2016, November 2016, too many people sat on their hands and stayed home. Didn't bother to vote. And that's why we've got the disaster we have now. One thing this administration has done, it's made George W. Bush look good. Didn't think anybody could do that. But they've done it now. There's always been an argument among historians who is our worst president. The decision seemed to be a toss-up between Warren G. Harding and James Buchanan. Well, the argument's settled. The worst president in the history of the United States is in office right now. And hopefully come 2020, November 2020, people that are demonstrating, people that are complaining will turn out and will vote. And we'll have a change of administration. And any change is change for the better. Any way you want to look at it. It's definitely change for the better. Also, very, very important are your votes for your state legislature and your local governors. That'll take place in that November. Votes for Congress, who you send to the House of Representatives, and who you send to the U.S. Senate. Right now, the Democrats control the House, and they should continue to control it. Big thing is to get control of the Senate. And of course, the way things have been going, hopefully, there are enough brains in this country that will make a change at the White House too. But again, you want to demonstrate, fine. That's free speech, guaranteed under the First Amendment. But the only way change is going to be made is if people go to the ballot box and vote. We'll be having local elections coming up in March. Primaries are going to start in February. And have the local caucuses in Iowa. Beginning of February, 1 week later, the first primary in the country. Our good friends over in New Hampshire will kick off the first primary. I believe from there it goes out west again to Nevada, then comes back east to South Carolina. Well, it's pretty obvious on the Republican side, of course, Trump will win those and he'll crow about it. The interest is in the Democratic Party to see how it's going to go, especially Iowa, New Hampshire, the first two. And we'll see how things shape up. The Democratic field should cut down a little bit after that. The next big forum is going to be held in Ohio a little later this month. And I think it's going to be on ABC. I'm not sure of that. I have to check that out. But that'll be the next Democratic forum. There will be 10 candidates. There may be some dropouts before then. Well, we don't know. Just have to wait and see. There may be one or two after that. But we will see how the thing is going. So the next forum in Ohio, and will be a little later this month, the month of October. Okay, well, when October, by American tradition, is the end of the baseball season. We're going to swing back to sports. And as I'm taping this program, there is a game in progress in Tampa, Florida, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Houston Astros. Now, these beginning playoffs could be all over today. Number one, if Houston wins, in St. Louis, if the Atlanta Braves win, in Washington, if the Dodgers win, and in Minneapolis, if the Yankees win. And that would set up your league championship playoffs. In the American League, between Houston and the Yankees, and in the National League, between the Dodgers and the Braves. So, 4 big games on TV today. And the season winds down. I know if you're a baseball fan, you kind of hate to see the season over. If you're a Red Sox fan, you look back on a season that could have been, but never quite was. And shortly after the World Series are over, we'll see some changes taking place, not only with the Red Sox, but pretty much throughout Major League Baseball. There are 8 managerial vacancies in the major leagues. You know, the manager's hired to run a team. He's one day closer to being fired the first day he takes over. If you don't win, and you win consistently, you're gone. I'm sure Cora, Red Sox manager, did a great job last year. He should have been manager of the year, but he just missed out. This year he fell flat on his face. The Red Sox, looking at last year, are going to keep him on for another year. Now, if he fails again, I think there'll be a managerial change. But I think he did the best he could with what he had. There's a lot of rumor going on. The New York Mets, the rumor is that they're going to hire the former Yankee manager, Joe Girardi, as their new manager. That's the rumor. We won't know until after the World Series are over. For the Red Sox, going to be some personnel changes. Some people will be leaving, and some people will be getting a raise in pay. But the order is, from the Red Sox owner, John Henry, he's dug deep in his wallet. The Red Sox have the highest payroll in Major League Baseball, and he wants that cut. And what those cuts will mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm sure there are some high-salaried people that will probably be leaving. Maybe Martinez and maybe David Price. They're earning big salaries, yet they're not producing on a regular basis. So that's the scene, National League Baseball. It's a scene as far as national politics are concerned. And as we look at the world today, heading into October, I think there's a lot of promise. I know there are a lot of reasons to get discouraged. We've got a war going on in Afghanistan that should be ended. We're trying to figure out how to relate with different countries, especially in the Middle East. We're looking at the effects of climate change. We're looking at immigration policies here in the U.S. We're looking at how Mother Nature is hammering us. I mean, we're being hit harder from Mother Nature than Muhammad Ali's got hit when they were in the ring with him. And this doesn't show any sign of letting up, but it has to be dealt with. You know, as a race, the human race, we've made a number of accomplishments. But one thing man in all his ingenuity cannot contain or cannot beat, and that's Mother Nature. And we're looking at the flooding effects that are still affecting the Midwest. The snow melt, the increased rainfall, all the farmlands out in the Midwest that were flooded through Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, Illinois, Kansas. You know, one time they were saying this is drought area. We need more water. Now they got more water than they can handle. We're looking now at the southeastern part of the U.S. They should get a good rain soaking today and possibly tomorrow, but they're talking about drought down there. So, again, the effects of Mother Nature. Man has not learned how to cope with it completely. And probably we never will. And until we realize that we have climate change and that things are changing and that we're going to have to make a change. Things are getting warmer, so they say. Sometimes it's hard to prove when you got a cold winter. But things are getting warmer. And how are we going to deal with it? Well, there don't seem to be any long-range plans in place, or even if we're going to be able to deal with it. But time will tell. Well, with that, I wish you all a very good week. May Almighty God in His infinite wisdom continue to bless these United States of America. God love you. God bless America. And we'll see you all next week.